Hi, very good afternoon and a warm welcome. My name is Cecilia. And first of all, I would like to voice my appreciation to the organizer for having invited me to present on this very auspicious conference. I also like to thank my chair, Lau, for his passion and for his compassion on this matter and subject. So I have been given the task of presenting the topic on single and aging in Malaysia. What does the future hold? So it's actually such a daunting task because such a question is open-ended and there are so many multi-factors and components. But I'll try my best and I hope that you will enjoy my session and take away one or two nuggets of wisdom or sharing. So the world is aging, and I know that you know that we have been bombarded with this information almost every day, yeah, in our media, in our news, and etc. But I am a bit concerned about this because I think that we are getting a bit complacent, and take it for granted. So what, the world is aging and no big deal. But I think it's time for us to now ponder about, wow, how amazing it is and how we have come so far to reach this phenomenon. So we Malaysia also have done this new hat, new title. We have become an aging society 2 years ago in 2020, and this has been recorded in the report in the World Bank report, and you can actually download it from the internet. And how do we become that? If we have a population of 7% or more with the age of 65 and above, then we have this title, the aging society. So how did this happen? And I think that it is so amazing. And sometimes I wonder, that we, like I said earlier on, we have taken it for granted because it is amazing. Just centuries ago, we would not be able to even think about being with our grandparents, great-grandparents. If you study the history of human evolution, yeah, it is estimated that the lifespan, life expectancy of human are around 20-ish, early 20s. And just imagine, that it is just enough time for you to be alive, to reproduce to your offspring and hang around, enough time for your offspring to be healthy enough so that they can go on reproducing to maintain the that we are available, the human existence. So, and then fast forward to today, look at us. We are living longer. So today, our life expectancy in Malaysia is on the average of 75, 76, depending on the gender, but it's about 75, 76-ish. And what a long way we have come to from 20 to now we are living to about 76 years old. And I thought that our reaction would be one of a celebration, that we will be like, oh yeah, jumping around with joy. We should be joyous and happy because now we have more time to spend time with our loved ones. We have more times to realize our dreams and our goals. We have more time to do things that we love to do, and we can grow our experiences. And perhaps we can have more time to fulfill our bucket list. But surprisingly, that is not quite our response and our reactions. Yeah, Malaysians are actually very anxious about growing old. Our statistics department are very anxious because they see these numbers going up and up and up. The bracket of population of older Malaysians. Yeah. And we can see the news from the media and all that. There's not very positive response, not very positive remarks. And Malaysia, us in a personal level, We are very concerned about our old age. We are concerned about our health. We are concerned about our independence. We are concerned about being a burden. We are concerned about our financial status. We are concerned if we will end up in a nursing home. It's all very negative. So in Malaysia, unfortunately, it's not just about aging. We are getting more segregated by age, and it's a very sad thing. So I think it's very important for us to remember that, like anything else, aging does not exist in a vacuum, right? It has an impact on the society, and the society influences the aging experience. It is all within a cultural component, a cultural context. So when we talk about aging, what are we bombarded with? Silver tsunami. And tsunami is not a great thing, it's a natural disaster. So it's got a very negative component. And we look at population aging as a global crisis. And Malaysia is at an aging crisis. And it's all very negative. We got a very negative narrative. And so Margaret Goulet is a well-known researcher in the area of aging. And she said it so succinctly that people tend to distance themselves from individuals or groups that frighten them. For example, after the World War II, we are fearful about the communists. And after the September 11th incident, then we are very fearful against Muslims. We have stigma and stereotypes against them. So there is even a theory called terror management theory, where it explains why fear can be manipulated against older people. And I am the vice president of the Age Group, which is a national association of service providers to the elderly in Malaysia. And this is something that has happened very close at home. It is in Sungai Petani, right? And it happened to one of our operators. So this operator has been operating in Sungai Petani residential area for years. And then there was a brand new resident who just moved in next to this facility. And they started a huge campaign to stop this operation, this aged care facility from operating, because they want to distance themselves from the elderly. So you can see the poster. This is actually in the news, in the newspaper, in the media. The poster that's erected almost everywhere to kind of stop them and get the authorities to revoke their license. And mind you, this they have already have their license. They already been in operations for years. And now the new resident come in and they were against it. So they started a campaign with all the residents. And you can see that it's out in the Chinese paper, right? And it says, keep all folks away from our residential area. Do not contaminate our youthful community. We are a high-class residential community. And sadly, there is a well-known certain Datuk who was there when I sat down in the mediation between the mayor and the residents and trying to resolve. And this was uttered by a well-known Datuk, who he himself is against having the aged care facility within the residential area. So that's why I said we are more segregated by age. We are okay if we have within our residence a nursery or a kindergarten or after school. But when we have an aged care facility, all hell break loose. And I think we have to stop and ponder why. And we have to talk openly about ageism. And I think that ageism is the most ridiculous discrimination-ism of all the race, all the ism. I think this is the most ridiculous because it's a discrimination against our own future self. Which one of us will not grow old? Yeah. So we are bombarded by news, and until we are kind of complacent and take it for granted again. We have seen this is all in our newspaper, old and unwanted. 1 out of 10 1 out of 10, imagine that it's 10% of our elderly Malaysians are subjected to abuse. Isn't it very sad? So, how did this aging population happen? Yes, we live longer, but if we live longer and we have a higher life expectancy, we will not end up with this phenomena called the aging population. What happened is that we live longer and we have lesser babies. Yeah. So because of that, we do not have the younger population, and we have more of the elder population. Hence, we have experienced this the aging population, because we are getting married at a later stage, and we are deciding to have babies much later. And some of us decide not even to get married or have babies, and we may have fewer babies than our ancestors. And that's reality, and it's global. It's happening everywhere. So, how did this happen? Yes, we are aging, and we are aging globally, but how did this come about from the history of human evolution till today, 2022? That's one word: culture. We human beings are creatures of culture. We depend on culture to tell us when to get married. So we can see different culture get married at a different time, when to receive education, whether or not we should receive education. Years ago, it is not so common for female to receive education, but today, look at us. We have more female than male at the varsity. We let culture determine which occupation holds a certain social prestige and status. Again, we depend on culture to tell us about retirement, when we should retire. Centuries ago, retirement is very unknown, it's unheard of. People do not retire, right? People pretty much work until they can't, until they get sick, or until they fall dead. So this is actually a fairly new concept. But again, because of culture, we have now begin to embrace retirement age. And even gender roles are determined pretty much by culture. I am not sure whether you are familiar with this, but it's quite interesting because my sister mentioned this, Sex in the City, the cast around my age, yeah. So my sister kind of mentioned this casually during the Chinese New Year. And she says, you know, if you look at the Sex and City and the Golden Girls, you know, they are about the same age, you know. Then I think, that's interesting. So Sex in the Cities are, I think they have the recent rerun is called And Just Like That, which is recent. And so compared to the Golden Girls were very famous in the 80s. And we can see the difference between how society view women, how women are being viewed amongst these two eras. And again, I think culture plays a very vital role. So how did culture influences this phenomena? And culture by means of science and technology. Yeah? We have science and technology, and that determines our behavioral practices and our social norms. Okay, we are more like just for recently the COVID, the recent pandemic, the past 2 years, the social norms has changed drastically. You know, we are working from home, we are staying at home, we wear a mask, hygiene practice, sanitization. Most of us are still working from home, okay, and we are not allowed to cross states. And so this is a new norm, we call it. Yeah, so again, it is culture. And so with the science and technology, we discovered how diseases spread, and we launched huge public health programs. We protect ourselves through vaccinations. We discovered antibiotics. We purified water wastages. And we discovered electricity. And with electricity, refrigeration. So food is safer. And not only that, we introduced public education for all children. And that makes a remarkable difference to today. So right now, here we are, standing at a point of human history where 4 to 5 generations are alive at the same time. Never before in human history. And I think that is a remarkable accomplishment of culture. When my grandmother passed on, I think about just 10 years, about 10 years ago, my grandmother lived to about 100. And it is amazing at the funeral service, we have 4 or 5 generations of us all together at the same platform. And I think that is simply amazing. And so often we have taken it for granted. So in an essence, what I'm trying to say by all this is that what our ancestors did to enable this to happen was to create a society to support the young life. Because in the past, we didn't live very long, right? There are so many infectious diseases and maternal fertility and etc. that we die young. And it's very common for children to die at a very young age. So with all this technology and this new culture, we then manage to support the life of young people that they can grow old. So life expectancy increased so fast, within a century, that we can actually live to in our 70s. 100 years ago, we didn't have the luxury of that. But it has increased so fast that culture did not catch up. We today live in a world that was created by and for the young people. Now let's stop to ponder. This is my own personal experience and see if you agree with me. When I take my mom to withdraw money from the ATM machine, you notice the timing when we have to insert the card and punch in the PIN number and the 6 digits, and my mom have to check and see. By the time she finished punching the 6 number, time's up. And you're given about 3 times to do that, and then they will eat your card, right? And when I take my mom to the Maybank to do her bank transaction and etc., she was asked to go upstairs. That's where the transaction happens. And it's a narrow staircase. And my mom has got arthritis and bad knees. She's not able to climb upstairs. And this is a park that I love to go every morning when I go for my morning jog. It is in Ipoh Polo Ground. And it's interesting to see that more than 60% of the people who use this facility at this park are older people, are people of 60 and above, 65 and above. It is the older people who often go to this park to exercise every morning rather than the young. Yet the facilities there, they only have 2 public toilets, one end to the other, for you to walk a distance. They don't have many seats for the elder people as they walk. They don't have handrails for older people. So it's pretty much designed for young people. And malls, for me to go to the malls and find a sitting place, it is very far from one end to the other. And have you been to the malls, restrooms, facilities? And just stop here and let you ponder when I say that our environment, our whole society, community are designed pretty much with young people in their mind. So I think it's time for us to change, We need to engage people of 65 and above because that's where the resources are. They are so rich with their experiences. We need a social structure to encourage contribution from this group of people, because if we build this culture, this new culture, to support long life, top heavy, with the experience of older Malaysians, you would then have a resource never available before in human history. You just imagine the impact. Because when I have projects on a small scale, my projects, and I don't have much team of young people, and people ask me, how did you do it, Cecilia? How do you make your project so successful? I have this pool of retired people. They're all professionals. They are lawyers, CEOs, they are accountants. They have with them the wealth of experience and knowledge. And I just happen to tap on them. Just imagine if we can do that as a nation. So today's topic is about singlehood. So when we talk about singlehood, we have to remember there are different types. There are lifelong singlehood, people who have been single all their life. There have been those who have been recently or not so recently divorced, and those who have been widowed. Why is it important? Because there's a difference. For widowhood, it is expected. It is very rare that couples die together, unless it happens on an accident, plane crash. Even that is very rare. So widowhood is somehow somewhat expected. So there is a lot of sympathy from the circles of network circles. But then when widowhood, there is a change in the social circles, because when we are a couple, we do things in couples. We go for functions that's for couples. So if I then become a new widow, I may feel out of place, that I'm now a widow, I don't really fit in. So there is a change of social circles and social network. But if I'm divorced in Malaysia, particularly, there's still a stigma associated with divorce. So I would have less support from my friends and my networks. And for lifelong singlehood, those who have been single all their life, they have developed skills and resources all their life. They know how to handle it single-handedly because they're used to it all their life. So that remains unchanged. And their social circle remain unchanged too, compared to these other two categories. Only thing that's different is people, their age pass on, so they have less and less circle, depending on from person to person. We'll talk about that later. So this is, I think, global. There are more single female elderly compared to single male, and this is especially so amongst the old, and this is common worldwide. It's global. It's a global thing. So let's talk about my research participants. I did my research in Ipoh, and my research is called Aging in Place in Ipoh. What does it mean to the elderly Malaysians? And with that, I like to quote Sharon Kaufman. She said that this process of growing old had been scrutinized by social scientists, by researchers, etc., for the past 40 over years. Yet not much has been written about aging by them themselves, who know most about it. So they are the experts. So my research was a qualitative one. So it is very, very close to their experiences, their lived experiences as they age in place in Malaysia. Okay. And I also have about 4,000 over members in Joy Club. Joy Club is actually just older youth club. It's a club for senior citizens up in Butterworth, initiated by Pagan Specialist Center, and it is to promote and to support active and healthy aging. So these are our members. So let's talk about the stories. I think stories are the only impactful way to answer the questions about where the future holds for the single elderly Malaysians. So these are real life stories. I'm plucking it from my research. Okay, so let's talk about Alice. Alice is 80 years old, was 80 years old actually, she passed on. She is a Teochew descendant. So she lived with her husband, the two of them, and children are all abroad. So when her husband passed on, the children came back to Malaysia and decided for her that it was not safe for her to live alone, and decided to relocate her to a nursing home facility in Ipoh. This happened in Ipoh. So obviously she became depressed because everything was foreign to her. She had to share a room with a fellow roommate whom she doesn't know. She then had to follow a new routine of when to bathe, when to eat, what to eat, when to sleep. She lost her sense of independence and personhood. So she became very withdrawn because she spoke only Teochew. And in Ipoh, it's not very common. People in Ipoh speaks more Cantonese. Yeah. So she became very withdrawn and isolate herself. So the staff there thought that, she's depressed. So brought her to see a psychiatrist. And she was prescribed with antidepressant and sedative. So it's got these side effects, sedative and antidepressant has got side effects. You become very sleepy and drowsy. So one day they woke her up for breakfast and she was still very sleepy because of the sedative she took. So she was having a breakfast and she was half asleep and she fell down. She broke her hip. She went for a total hip replacement, developed bed sore, developed multiple pressure sore. Unfortunately, she died from septicemia. Let's look at another case study. This is Anne, 90. So she was also a widow. Let's compare and contrast these two cases here. She also had a fall, but Anne had a fall while she was doing gardening. She was an avid gardener. So she had a fall, she broke her hip. Same, she went for a total hip replacement. In the hospital, she developed stage 1 pressure sore and was treated early. And you can see that a few days later, it healed the sore. And she lives a very normal life. She lives by herself with a maid. And she's very active still in her garden. And there's another case, Lucy, also a widow, lived by herself. All of them live by themselves, by the way. She had a fall, she broke her hip. And her son called for a doctor, call doctor. And the doctor came and said, okay, what do you expect at her age? There's nothing much to be done. No point doing anything. So they just left her bedridden. Overnight, she became bedridden. And she developed a sacral sore. You can see that's a sore. So she was transferred to a nursing home. At the nursing home, she developed multiple sores. And she died of septicemia, shock. Yet another lady, I call her AK. All pseudonyms here. She was 75, and when her husband died, I attended the wake. And when I told her, Auntie, I'm so sorry for your loss, and she was so angry, and she looked at me and she said, sorry? You are sorry? You know how happy I am now that he died? He has been an alcoholic and abused me and whacked me all my life. Now that he's gone, I have this newfound freedom. I can live the way I want. I don't have to live in fear anymore that he will come and hit me every time he takes alcohol. I am at last free. So to her, it's a new lease of life. Betty too, when her husband died, everybody was so skeptical. Everybody was like worried because Betty has been a very dependent type of lady, like a Tai type, you know, who doesn't know how to pay the bill, who doesn't drive, who depend on the husband for everything. So when the husband dies, everybody was very concerned for her. How is she going to continue her life now that, you know, the husband is gone and she is not an independent type? But surprisingly, she managed to adapt. She reached out to her wide social network, to her church community, to her neighbors, to her mahjong kaki. And then she learned new skills. She never had a handphone. Then she now have her husband's, late husband's handphone. She learned how to use technology. She learned how to use Skype. And she's managing pretty well. Chin, also widowed. Husband has been very controlling type. So she, after the passing of her husband, she now have a huge, very active social life that she always wanted. She goes to the church activities, she volunteers at nearby places, and she travels with her girlfriends, and she's not able to enjoy the life in the way that she always wanted. So Macho is a single. He has been single all his life. He's a homosexual, and he had a partner, but they're not living together, but he has a partner. And but in Malaysia, of course, it's been frowned upon. He's been estranged from his family members because of his sexual orientation. And there is a huge social stigma attached to being a homosexual. So he has a very, very small network circle. And even the small network circle is dwindling because they are about his same age as him. So it's more challenging for him. It's more challenging for him. He has no access to his partner's pension. His partner passed on. But if you are a female and or a male and you're married to a guy, you can have the access to your husband's pension. But because in this kind of arrangement, that's not possible. So financially, he is also facing some strains. Peter was an excellent dancer. I know because I've danced with him before. He had this title of a dancing champion when he was younger. He went all across Malaysia, participated in many dance competitions. He did the rock and roll, the waltz, you name it. And then he had dementia. And he stopped dancing. And there was a sharp decline after his diagnosis because he self-isolated. And I asked Peter, why is it that you love dancing so much? It brings so much joy to you. Why do you stop dancing? Is it because of your mobility? And his answer, I will never forget what he says. He says, no, Cecilia, I stopped dancing because I cannot dance the way I used to, the way people expect me to dance. I'm ashamed. That's a very, very sad thing, isn't it? So I'm not sure if you get the message from all this case study. And you can see that the different singles, whether you're a male or you're a female, a single elderly in Malaysia, they all have their experiences differently. Each person is different. Depends on our personality, depends on our conditioning. But very most important is the culture that we are in, that we are at. It kind of have a major impact on how we experience aging as a single person. So let's talk about research, okay? So this is to compare my research with the research that has been done globally. So this is a research done at the Europe. And it's very interesting because you're going to compare Netherlands and Italy, which is just next to each other, quite neighbor, isn't it? On north and south. And it investigates the effects of the differences between the people in Netherlands and the Italians. And they want to see those with and without partners who are living with their living arrangement, living with their children, with their older children. So let's say if I'm from Italy, I'm Italian, and I can be with my partner, or I am a widow and I live alone with my husband died. So now I go and relocate and stay with my children. They're comparing me with my girlfriend, similar age, who is going through the same process. She lost her husband, and she in Netherlands is also living with her children. So they're going to compare our experiences between mine and hers. And it's interesting to note that because Italians are very family orientated, the culture is different compared to Netherlands. Netherlands, they are very, they prefer to be alone. Okay, there is not so much of the family orientation. So they do not appreciate sharing the house with the extended family. So there is a cultural component. I'm happier and I'm happy to live with my children, my grandchildren, compared to my girlfriend who is in Italy living with her children. She's miserable because she would rather be alone, and I'm happy with my family. And the difference is because of culture. Okay, so this is also another study from these 6 European countries, and it suggests that the feelings of loneliness, you're staying alone, is more prevalent in areas where being alone is very rare, all right, compared to the countries where community bonds are the strongest. So again, it's like Netherlands and Italy, right? Because in Italy, the culture is different. It's more family unity and community compared to other countries like Netherlands and UK, right? So again, there is a cultural component. So this study also, another study done, is living alone, aging alone. And this study kind of, the finding states that it really depends on a country level factors. Depends on the culture of the factory that influences, and whether you have a social network, big social network or small and all that. And again, it has a cultural component to it. So then you begin to think that to answer the question, where does the future hold? It really depends on the culture, isn't it? Just look at me. I have a very bad my eyesight is very bad. And by the model of the healthcare model or medical model, I will be considered a disabled handicap because I am pretty much blind without my glasses. And I'm able to function. I cannot drive. I cannot take care of myself. I definitely cannot work, being unable to see. But because of what we call the spectacle, this technology, that I'm able to then see, I can have my vision back. With that, I have my life back. I'm able to adapt. I'm able to be independent. I'm able to drive and go to work. So these are the environment supportive measures that enable me to cope in spite of my handicap. So this is the culture. This is an analogy of what I'm trying to embark on. Yeah, that older people have the potential to see possibilities instead of just problems. And aging itself can be a catalyst for rich experiences. It gives us a new way to renew our passion, to reinvent ourselves, to reimagine all the possibilities that life could bring. Now that you have all the experiences that you never had when you were younger, you had all the wisdom, you had all the knowledge. And Laura says that, and so aptly she says that older people, knowing that they face a limited time in front of them, they focus their energies on what gives them pleasure in the moment. They live the moment to the fullest. So a new culture that I hope we will create, that will be an inclusive culture, age inclusive, of age of every spectrum. A new culture that embarks on unity, a world for older people. A better world for older people means a better world for everyone. Which of us will not grow old? Because aging is a powerful, natural process that unites us all, because it's something that all of us will experience. So the experience of aging, whether it's positive or negative, it depends on the culture where it takes place. So remembering back our case study of a person, my dear friend, who stopped dancing because she's been diagnosed with dementia. That story is very poignant to me. Let's create a culture where everyone can dance just the way they wish to. There's no stigma, no discrimination. And this is, I took this from my Memory Cafe. For those of you who are not familiar, Memory Cafe is a activity center for people living with dementia and their loved ones. So this, I will end it with this. Let's create a culture where everybody can dance like this. So, single and aging in Malaysia, what does the future hold? The answer is right there at the picture. The three generations holding the key. The answer is us. We hold the key to create a culture that facilitates everyone to live together to the fullest, old and young. So the future of the single and aging Malaysians are pretty much in our hands. With that, I thank you.